ahead and get started. Um, Good morning. My name is Craig Douglas. I'm here with Patrick this morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining our March 21st TPA membership meeting. We're grateful for your time this morning. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes before we get things kicked off. We are recording the session today, so if you need to bounce off for any reason, we will be following up the meeting with all of the attachments and a link to the recorded session. We'll be posting some things in the chat, so feel free to use that to communicate with anybody on the panel or each other. And we will post links as we go through the session today. And you can also use the Q&A feature as well. We'll be monitoring that throughout the session today. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. And Patrick, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. So I'm going to briefly cover a few things that we will look to do at today's meeting. So we are going to talk about federal budget. We're going to talk about the continuing resolution bill that was passed. We are going to talk some advocacy about PA. A little bit later in the program today, we're going to be joined by Lauren House, Jeremy Yale, with a selective contracting, performance-based contracting period just having closed for everyone's performance measures who needed to submit, and for the pay for performance initiative funds having just closed on the 15th. We want to get some early takeaways, talk about next steps, have a discussion with Jeremy and Lauren on performance-based contracting. We're going to review some of the recent technology summits that were held at Temple in Philadelphia and at Carlow University in Pittsburgh. So we look forward to discussing that with Kaylee Day from the Pennsylvania Tech Accelerator Project. So a couple of other brief comments before we get into some of the upcoming events. We do have an open poll, and this poll is directly related to your expectations of whether you will be assigned the tier assignment if you're a residential provider for which you did apply. So Craig's going to drop that in the chat. We're not doing it within the Zoom format. So we have, as you may know now, the online poll. We kind of open this up every week. We do a poll. It's some good feedback for us, hopefully for you as well. We welcome and encourage you to suggest poll questions to us so we can get some feedback and hopefully promote some more engagement on the types of things that we want to have discussion over. I briefly want to thank and acknowledge the people who helped us out with breakout sessions over the first couple of months of this year at our TPA membership meetings. We are, as you may know if you participated, the tech was not great on those sessions, so we are not going to put folks through that, although we really appreciate people who hosted, facilitated, all of you who attended. The tech is just not working in a real seamless way that we wanted and intended, but we do think that was worthwhile to try out. We did have some good discussion in those groups, but in that segment today is when we're going to cover all of the performance-based contracting things that I've just mentioned. So with that, I'll get into some of the upcoming events. First up, we have the official opening of the Disability and Mental Health Summit. This is the 12th annual Disability and Mental Health Summit that Representative Dan Miller is hosting. This is, for those of you who do not know, Representative Miller is leaving the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. He's running for judge. So don't know what the future of the summits holds, but he has certainly done a great job hosting these, putting these on, bringing in great guests, engaging with the local community. We've talked about this a little bit already this year. So these are going to be held at Allegheny County Community College. It's a two-day event. Friday the 9th is largely going to be in affiliation with Special Olympics. And both days are going to be great. There's a lot of opportunities. TPA is involved with a pre-conference online training that we're going to do. It's on performance-based contracting. It will be geared toward families, individuals. So we're going to be putting that together. That is scheduled right now to be done on April the 10th. If you missed that, we will be, I'm sure, putting it out on our website. So hopefully you can join us then. We want to encourage everybody to reach out to your legislators. Unlike previous years where we have hosted a meeting on site that day, we do not intend to do that. I may have said this already, the first couple of meetings this year. We just want to get as many reps and senators from PA to the event, experience what's going on there. This is something I know that Our dear friend and colleague Tim Powell, when I first took this job in 2017, and this was maybe a few years into the summit, said you should really promote the summit. This is a good thing. We began doing that. And my predecessor colleague, Ed Piccarini, had really engaged a lot of legislators from PA on some issues, and we, about the same time, began our annual TPA Legislative Appreciation and Awareness Forum. And those two events have merged over the years, so we actually do a luncheon on site at the summit. We will continue to do that for legislators. So as you reach out to your legislators, you can let them know TPA is doing that. Dan Miller's office is also extending invitations, acknowledging that we will be hosting a lunch for them. But unlike previous years, we're not going to host a meeting. We're not going to simulcast that meeting. We will keep to our regular meeting schedule, but still visit the website. It is up live. All the program content is there and proves to be a really great couple of days. And we encourage everybody to go and join and participate in it. Next up, we have our save the date has just been released. TPA Con 2025 will be on July 25th. We have our theme. We are working very diligently to do outreach to get people to attend and sponsor. And I'll remind everyone that this is a free event for TPA members. Non-members are charged a fee to attend, but a great opportunity to bring folks in. ODP, again, is committed to join us as they have for the last couple of years. Really an event I enjoy, a lot of people getting together. We've sold it out the last couple of years. We'll see how much capacity we could add this year. And a free event, please consider when you get a notice for sponsorship if you want to do a table or something like that. If you're sending some folks along, we would appreciate sponsorship help. And those opportunities will be going out very soon as well. So with that, I want to welcome in Michelle O'Toole from the Office of Developmental Programs. Michelle, as I know, most of you know, is the Regional Program Manager for the Western Region Office of the Office of Developmental Programs. Michelle, we want to take the opportunity because we know you've announced your retirement and you've been such a good dear friend of TPA. You've brought us so much information. We've had such a great relationship with you in the office over the years. So we wanted to congratulate you on the great career and whatever you're doing next. And we also wanted to thank you and express our gratitude from myself, TPA, all our members I know. So thank you very much for all of that. And thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. You're too kind. I try to avoid the emotional part of it, but definitely one of the greatest decisions I've made in my career was to move out here to the West and be part of this community. And it has been the best coming up on 12 years of my working life. And that's due to the collaboration and the friendship and the welcoming from all of you. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks again, Michelle. Thanks for being here. I know we have some stuff we want to talk about today. So we'll start with just some general updates. We have some things we know are all very recent. I think all of these things have come out in the past week. If you want to comment on anything further. And then I know we have a little discussion that we were having just yesterday. We're going to get into a little bit too. But before we do that, just wanted to give you the chance to kind of look at some of the things upcoming. We had outreach from one of our members on the transition independent living payments. So an issue that I think that not in the spirit and intent of the regulation, or I guess the announcement as written, but I know there was some guidance I think just put out on that yesterday. So I don't know, Craig, that we've even put that out. Yeah, you have it posted on the site, I know. So I'll encourage everybody to just go to our site. We have any of these announcements already posted on the information, the Learn page. So you can download these, read them, but Michelle, really anything that you want to comment on, we have them available for members. We'll continue to summarize the content, but just wanted to give you the chance to talk a little bit about some of the recent news and happenings with ODP.
Yeah, thank you. With regard to the first item, the transition to independent living payments, the current process is that the residential opportunity be held for a person who's moving into independent living for 6 months. And that was really and is intended to make sure that there's time for that person to successfully transition, make sure things are stable without kind of leaving without a safety net, which we think was always an impediment for people willing to make that jump. So we are re-examining that and we'll be reissuing guidance around those payments. And really what we'll be looking at is continuing to have that 6-month safety net in there as the outside, but allowing for individuals and teams to make a decision earlier in this process that the transition is successful, that people are okay, and that it would be okay to release that residential opportunity sooner. So I think that's the relief that people were looking for. Makes sense. And so those changes are being made now and going through the vetting process. So I hope to see them fairly soon. And we have already reached out to people who are in this process that have asked us that question to confirm that, yes, let's get back to the team and see what makes sense in this individual circumstance.
Okay, that's great news. Thank you for that. And we'll encourage our members, if you have a similar situation or looking at a transition, to probably be in touch with the office just to help maneuver through that, help guide some expectations about what that might look like in your unique situation as well. And we know you have these autism spectrum disorder in-person seminars. I think those are East, West, and Central regions. Those are in person. I mean, there's some CLV credits. So another good opportunity for folks to get together. I know ODP's promoting that and wants to see folks register and attend for those as well. I think we're going to announce this Monday, members. So registration may be out. Craig can help me out if we have it already on the site, but this is just something to look for.
I was hoping maybe Lauren was still there and able to jump in on the ARPA grants, because I know she's spends a great deal more time with these than I have.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just sent out a reminder. I think it was on the 19th this week, but just a reminder for providers where you have approved ARPA. We were calling them, I think, at the time, grant applications specific to technology. But want to remind folks that all of those expenses through the ARPA initiative need to be incurred by the end of this month. So making sure that you have documentation to substantiate what you have paid for up until this point. And the final deadline for reimbursement submissions will be May 31st. And so there is a link included in the email that was sent out through the listservs. Patrick, if you guys need that, we can send that over to you so that folks have that available to them. But just wanted to remind folks of the upcoming deadline at the end of this month to incur those expenses, and then the May 31st deadline to request reimbursement.
Thanks, Lauren. Is that link in the announcement? I know Craig just
It is. Yep. All the links are there. So the different announcements that sort of talk about the ARPA grants and what was available, and then the link for submission is also included.
If anybody who did apply, Lauren, are they getting any direct communications that, status, percentage of progress, or anything like that directly, or are you just relying on people? The main correspondence is going out generally in the announcements.
Right. Yeah. We'll look at once sort of all the final submissions are presented, but we have not been doing like directed communications to providers who submitted and had an approved proposal. So if you did have that approved proposal, just make sure that you're caught up, in terms of invoicing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'll remind members, if you have an open grant, please submit. And that's a hard deadline. That's federal government. No extensions you would anticipate at all?
Nope, not we. I think we have squeezed every last drop of ARPA out of the federal government. Deputy Secretary has done an incredible job leveraging those dollars, getting as many of them available as possible to especially our providers, supports coordination organizations. Our counties have benefited from them, and so this will truly be the very last one. I know we had a number of hey, ARPA's been extended communications over the last couple of years. There are no additional extensions available, and so this will be a hard and fast deadline.
Sure. And thank you for that. And I'll take it one measure further. Don't even wait till the 31st in this environment. We wouldn't expect any approvals, extensions. If you have money that's outstanding and you've completed what you need to do to submit for that, please do so immediately. So we want to make sure, and I know ODP does, that you get your funds to reimburse for those projects. Okay, so thanks for covering that, Lauren. I don't, Michelle, if you wanted to kind of talk about order of selection.
Sure, sure.
Or
So,
Lauren, whoever wants to tackle it.
I have it pulled up. I'm happy to do it. So we did send out an announcement 318. So it's 25-028 related to the announcement from Office of Vocational Rehab that closes order of selection as of April 1st. And their order of selection is essentially like their waiting list, kind of their who we pick when we pick. So for two of the categories, the people with a non-significant disability, NSD, and significant disability, the order of selection is closed, so they will just be on a waiting list until the order of selection reopens. For those people with the most significant disability, they will continue to be included in the selection for OVR. So within the announcement, it gives you the details and additionally the links to the OVR memo. But what it means for us is that we still apply when we get told that we're on a waiting list. We now can access waiver funds for supported employment services. And then also within the announcement, it explains that let's say you start ODP services for employment and OVR calls you and says, "Yay, you've been picked off the waiting list." That's your choice now as an individual, whether you want to stay with ODP or whether you want to go into access OVR services. So, we've made sure that that's in there so that the continuity of services and those relationships that we know are so critical to anybody receiving supports can be maintained if that's what the individual desires. So that's really what it means to us. It just means that if we get notified we're waitlisted, that we can now access ODP employment services.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there anything else, just in terms of general news announcements, that either of you wanted to cover other than performance-based contracting? Of course, we'll tackle that a little bit later in the hour. But are there any
That's
other
all
general
Lauren. I would like to just bring to everybody's attention that the Room and Board bulletin did come out on March 17th, and that is 2501, so 25-01, and really provides a lot of clarification around the Room and Board kind of nuances and rules, and relates between the different chapters of regulations also to add that clarity as to how Room and Board charges are calculated, how it's collected, and what kinds of things go into the Room and Board calculation. So really super helpful. There's also training that will be coming out for providers. And I'm going to apologize to not having the date for that on the top of my head. I'm just trying to look quick to see if it's in the bulletin. But I will get that to you.
While you look for that, or you can certainly forward it to us. We do have a question going back to the OVR order of selection.
Sure.
Can the individual do both OVR and ODP at that point? Is the question.
I believe it's kind of, you can't have the same service at the same time situation that we have in any other of our service rules. So I would say no.
Okay.
Typically it's pick one or the other. I'll definitely get clarification. But the other thing, I'm glad you brought it back up, because there is also contained in the bulletin or in the announcement related to the order selection, there's training on April 14th at 11 a.m. that you can register for as well. So that'll give you some additional, information and ability to get down into the specifics of how the employment services will work.
And thanks, Lauren. Lauren's dropped in the chat for everybody. March 28th, 1 to 2:30 p.m. The Room and Board training for the res providers. So
I spend an hour every Wednesday on it. I don't know how it left my head, but thank you.
Okay, so I want to reserve some time for some of the discussion that we started yesterday, and this is something I know that I was aware of and that we were going to probably talk about at some point. But Craig, if you could go next slide, and this is an excerpt from We've been doing these perspectives from the field blog on the site. Craig, maybe you can drop the link to the full post, but I just wanted to pull out this little quote, and I think I mentioned this when we were speaking yesterday, Michelle. What we were talking about kind of reflected, to me at least, back to some of the messaging. And this is specifically with respect to the 3,000 or so new waivers that have been released to people. So this is sort of just to give it context. This is a comment around, and I'll just read it for those that are not on video to read it on screen. Due to our continuing workforce struggles, we are quick to point out that everyone who receives a new waiver under the state's multi-year growth strategy does not necessarily receive all services for which they are authorized. But calling that out alone will not fix the problem. Additional waivers mean more people and families now have the power to buy services, not just residential, but all services that their waivers allow. And because there's been so much emphasis on residential, of course, and between waiting lists, performance-based contracting, but those waivers apply everywhere. And I guess now, Michelle, I'll kind of let you kind of frame the discussion, because I know that the initial contacts were to your office, and my expectation was we were going to have a chat about maybe there's an opportunity for providers to work with some families and deliver some of these services. But at the end of the day, that's something that we always want to do in the provider community, is sort of meet the needs. But maybe go next slide, Craig, and this can kind of help frame our conversation. These were just my own takeaways from the conversation we had yesterday. But I want to throw it back to you, Michelle, to kind of lay the foundation on what we were talking about. And then we can pick it up from there and see if members have questions or feedback, thoughts, ideas. So
Yeah,
please go ahead.
thanks, Patrick. So, one of the fun parts of my job is getting to meet with families, but unfortunately, oftentimes they want to talk about unmet needs. So we did have an opportunity to, Brian Dangler, who is the lead in our office for community participation supports and employment, had an opportunity to meet with a family group at ARC of Greater Pittsburgh. And they also represent, and I'll mess it up, so if Mary Hartley's on here, I appreciate her help. I know it's Beaver and Erie and the Westmoreland and stretch around a bit. So we had a good smattering of parents throughout the region. And they all kind of brought to my attention something which I have heard before, and that is that we have folks that have, are still struggling to figure out how to work their way in the world. They, choose ways to meet their needs that are sometimes difficult to manage in the community. And so they're becoming isolated, kind of in the family's home. They have one-to-one HAB. They have the enrollment in the waiver, so they have the opportunity to be able to, look for supports and look for solutions, but still resulting in, the same difficulties in staffing that we hear everywhere, as well as this sense of isolation that both the families and the individuals are feeling, and the loss of community and the loss of a peer group for their adults. So they really are looking for some kind of a solution to that. I think that, one of the solutions they've looked at was, maybe there's a possibility for some kind of a support that involves some facility-based time and a great deal more community integration. They see their loved ones as, being able to go to the basketball court and maybe play ball for a while and maybe get engaged in those kind of activities, hit a baseball game, do those kinds of things with support, but also still with some time together as, a group of peers, maybe learning skills together, even if, and having some ability to enhance their social skills and enhance the skills that they need to, kind of regulate their responses to things. So really that's the ask is, who can we talk to that might be willing to work with us with this kind of an idea for supports? And, would it mean potentially everyone within the, you all know if you have 4 or more, you need a license. So would it be everyone within the space that was used as part of each individual's plan? Would that have to be licensed? Sure. Would it mean that everybody maybe had, their own staff as we begin the process of growing and learning together? Yeah. But how do we get these kind of folks together, and together maybe with a provider who would be interested in exploring this kind of an idea or an option for folks to get out of their house, get together with people who had been friends or make new friends, and also have that kind of support that they need to start accessing the community and seeing what kinds of things they'd be interested in learning and what kinds of things they'd be interested in. Um, but also have that safe place, that ability to step in both worlds uh, with some flexibility. So I think, and I know I saw Mary Hartley, and if you're there, Mary, and I would love for you to weigh in and see if I got it right.
Yeah, while we get Mary elevated up to the panel, forgive me, Michelle, if you've covered this, but my sense when we talked was these are some folks with some complex needs, so nursing might be an element. And again, some of this harkens back to if facility-based had all this, and in some instances, families were very interested, used to those types of supports. But at the same time, we are in a new environment. And how do we merge things? How do we take advantage of technology? How do we take advantage of, as you mentioned, a workforce? Maybe as members, we don't have workforce, we're struggling already. But families who come to us may have other resources other than themselves. So, how we can work within the current environment is something I was intrigued by, and I wanted to make sure we have this conversation in front of members. So, with that, Mary, if you'd like to add anything to the discussion, certainly we, as Michelle acknowledged, you were the person who kind of brought this forward as a potential opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And certainly these families have been struggling, and Melissa and Michelle, thank you for doing such a beautiful job talking about this. I think that for many of these individuals, their best opportunity right now is one-to-one and no access to other people. It is very isolating. And even in the behavioral realm, um, although, I think there are things that could be done that make it more community-based. There is a model in Western Pennsylvania that is every person receives one-to-one in what could be more of a community-based model, but is currently a little more facility-based, I believe. So I think that there are models out there. I don't know the fiscal implications for an agency to do that at this present time. But as Michelle said, and I think Patrick, even having nursing care, having behavioral supports within a facility-based model could help these families. And particularly, I would just say Allegheny County being so huge with a lot of individuals who have very significant behavioral health needs, some people requiring 2-to-1 services. There's probably more opportunity there. This other model that exists, they feel is successful. I don't know all the implications of that. And for years we've talked about this, right? This sort of double dipping idea. If a facility would hire a nurse, they could potentially, the person could be sharing that nurse with other people. That they don't necessarily all need one-to-one nursing care. They may need a feeding tube throughout the day, that kind of thing. So, as much as we want to promote community, and I think these families are also interested in maybe more of a drop-in model, maybe something that isn't quite our hub model in the service definition, and thinking about the future of how, and I would say people without very complex disabilities are looking at this. And I heard Kristen tell recently a group of us about where providers have different people living in different, let's say, apartments with supports. They have like a community meeting space where they can connect. I really think people can go and use the community if they had more time, not just bathrooming, that kind of thing, connected to a regular community setting. So I do think there's an opportunity to perhaps write something for the next waiver. But for right now, I think families are really just struggling and would like to find a provider who will take someone who needs one-to-one support.
Mhm. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Behavior supports, I'm sorry, behavior supports are, so discrete behavior support can be given in a day program,
Right.
to use the vernacular. So that's workable, but yeah, thank you. I do think with some creativity and fiscal expertise on the part of providers, because they're the ones who know how to make this work, that maybe this is workable in a new way to approach the connection that families have long had with day programs. And I think in Pennsylvania, we've always acknowledged that a lot of our services grew up out of ARCs, and that families do have that connection to that day service. That was what was started. That was there long before any residential opportunities besides institutions. And so, we've never sought not to have that. At least I've never seen us seek not to have that, but how to make that, you know, match the world today, match the way that people live today. And I think those parents were very compelling in what they were talking about and asking for. So I committed to try and reach out to Patrick and providers. So when we meet Mary, I met this one, right?
Yeah, I know, Matt,
And,
no better place and time to do it than when we have a membership meeting. A lot of folks can
Yeah.
listen. Again, we
Thank
know
you.
that you as members do these things. I wish we had more time to kind of get into this and maybe get some feedback and take some questions. But again, I think this speaks to there are still opportunities to innovate. We're a little bit hampered. There's changes with supports coordination, but we know we have a lot of creative providers that are doing this every day. Again, it's sort of back to there's a market of folks that aren't getting any services. Waivers are being issued to those folks. So we want to close that gap. And to the extent you have questions in membership, please reach out to TPA directly to ODP. And I'm sure that we'll solve these issues over time. It takes approaching it from various angles. So Mary, Michelle, thank you both.
Thank you.
We are going to move on into some budget and advocacy implications. So just as we sort of tee that up, Greg, if you can go to the next slide. We probably have a couple slides here that I just want to talk about briefly. Just this past week, U.S. Congress, through the Senate, actually passed a continuing resolution bill. This is to keep the government in operation through the end of the current federal fiscal year, September 30th. Just reminding everyone that the federal fiscal year runs differently than our state fiscal year. So this is an article. We have this article posted. This is a Capitol correspondence from Anchor. It's posted on our TPA website. So you can take a read of the full article. This just gives basically the details around the fact that the stopgap bill will continue to fund federal operations. This will continue Medicaid and other sources, although there will be other things happening during this interim period. And I believe it was yesterday, Anchor opened a letter that organizations could sign on to rejecting Medicaid cuts. So I think we can share the link to this. I know it's going to go out on Monday with our Monday update, but we'll give you a quick look at it here. You should be able to download the letter. There's a question pro where you go through making sure you just authorize that you are authorized to sign the letter. And I believe the organization's names are going to go. And Leader Thune, Schumer, Speaker Johnson's, Leader Jeffries, they are going to be the recipients of this letter, urging Congress again to not cut the $880 billion essentially to Medicaid. That has been, of course, announced, published here the past many weeks. So with that, we kind of want to go into, and I want to bring in our next guests today. We have with us Nancy Murray, who everybody I know knows very well and is familiar with, and also Nello Giorgetti from C&G Strategies. I know many of you know and are familiar with David Caligiuri from being at our meetings, but David couldn't be here. Nello has graciously agreed to jump in. So Nello, welcome to TPA. Welcome to our membership. I want to just give you a moment to say hello. Feel free to talk about yourself for a couple of minutes, because one of the things I encourage David to do is sort of make sure that our members know about your services there, because we work with you directly on advocacy and in all of our work as well with the other associations. But If you could take a moment, please, I'd appreciate it if you could say hello to everybody.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nello Giorgetti. David and I have, well, David is family. He's my son's godfather, and we go back a long, long way, both on a personal and on a professional basis. I've been a lobbyist for about 30 years now. Prior to my going into the dark side of the force, I worked for Senator Jay Costa as his first chief of staff when he got elected to the Senate. Um, uh, I can tell you that it's a pleasure to be here. This is not the first time I met you, Pat, but I'm glad to be here this morning with you and Nancy to talk
Yeah,
about.
thanks for being here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been covering the budget the last couple of months at our meetings. I think we've been pretty data heavy. Obviously, driving force behind everything that's going to affect IDA in Pennsylvania, federal budget, what's happening in Medicaid. I want to talk in a moment, Nello, about what we're doing in Pennsylvania, working with some of the other associations, which we continue to do very effectively. But any sort of top end takeaways? I personally will say I've respected the way the state of Pennsylvania has kind of handled things in terms of we're vigilant, we're waiting to see what's real, we're preparing. We've been delivering a similar message here to TPA members. We are still working in the system, but we of course know federal government, and I know you're keenly aware of what goes on in the impact at the state government level as well. So would you mind commenting on that?
So, the fiscal year for Pennsylvania, uh, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania goes from uh, July 1 to June 30th. So we have a different fiscal year than the feds do, but it has become very concerning because of the continuing resolution that the Congress passed last year and this uncertainty that it provides, because so much of what the the state budget outside of its own general fund is provided by the federal government. No one knows what potential cuts are coming down the line. So ordinarily, I would say, by the end of June, we'll have a budget. Pretty much the line items that you see will change slightly, but there won't be a big difference. I don't know. I'll be very honest. This is a very crazy time. Like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I have never dealt with anything like this when it comes to the budget. For example, higher ed, all of a sudden, what were some modest increases in higher ed proposed funding, it looks like they're going to be ratcheted down to zero. I mean, there will be no increase in higher ed. Uh, it's a crazy world we're living in, guys. I don't have to tell you that, right? And it has direct implications on what the state is doing. And I, I, I'm trying to caution all my clients to receive funding from state government, to reach out to your legislators, reach out to your senators, but understand that increases are not going to happen in this year's budget. We do have a surplus. We do have a rainy day fund, and that might tide us over for this year. But there are serious implications from what the feds are doing and what the office of the president is up to, that have a direct impact on all our lives.
Hey, Nello, I'm going to take the opportunity to just segue into the second item on this list here, because what you just said highlights for me, and I'm sure our members, when you talk about even modest increases, one of the things we always see in the IDA budget, which I will admit we virtually ignore, is the annualization of services. So people come into service, new people come in, and it's almost like, well, that's just annualization. We're kind of dismissive of it. It's $175 million of
I
state
wouldn't
funds in
dismiss anything like that. Yes.
yeah. So I think that gets to the last time that Nancy and I spoke with the other associations, we were sort of having the same conversation. In terms of our budget ask has to be really strong. like that annualization needs to stay in the budget. I think in a typical year, as you said, maybe for any time in the last 30 years, we would just look at it like we didn't really get anything in the budget. We didn't get initiative money. We didn't get rate increases. So we're not at risk. But this year feels very different as well. And I think I want to highlight that here for our conversation for our members. We are at risk because to legislators, that just looks like $175 million increase, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it does. So we're going to need to spend a lot of time educating them on that at this point in time.
Yeah. So reminder again, bring your legislators to the Disability Summit. And this will be messaging that we need to continue to develop here. You know, we've been using the Anchor site and Anchor resources a lot. As you've seen in this meeting already, that's mainly what we've been focused on because everything has been so federally driven. But this is a really important conversation that, you know, I think the associations will again be unified. You know, we're going to come together on exact messaging, but we want to have clarity for you as well, for your everyone who's interested, and we of course want you to be interested and help deliver this message because, you know, the combination of a potential cut to Medicaid, which means federal matching dollars, which is more than half of what goes into our services, and the lack of any annualization of funding. Be a little unclear what that might mean because that doesn't necessarily change the fee schedule rates, but it would have a secondary implication. If they cut the budget, eventually rates are going to go down, not immediately. So, you know, I'm not trying to push that out there to be scary. Again, we're being vigilant. We want to communicate what's real. But what's real is our advocacy around making sure that we protect what's already in this budget, even though it may feel to us like it's flat funding, it's nothing. It's a big number when a legislator or somebody wants to take money for another program, or somebody else that wants money for their services looks at that, you know, that could very easily be attacked. So I want to move to Nancy. I'm sorry, Nancy, we only have a few remaining minutes, but these are important minutes, I know, because related to what I just said, this is not new, but I want you to talk at least about these couple of initiatives that we have here on screen, because these are important. You've been actively involved in these. And again, we've been talking top line with the other associations on these as well. So Nancy, could you give us the latest news, please?
Yes, and I can talk quickly. Everybody knows what the market index bill is all about. We continue to work with all of the other associations. I think at the last meeting, we reported that Senator Escamilla and Senator Lindsey Williams did post a co-sponsorship memo to introduce the bill in the Senate. Unfortunately, we do not yet have a bill number because it is stuck in the Legislative Reference Bureau being written. However, in the meantime, we're also having conversations with potential co-sponsors, both in the Senate and in the House. As for House Bill 700, TPA has really taken the lead with House Bill 700 to get the augmentation fund permanent through the fiscal code. We're working with the ARC of Pennsylvania on this, but we really have taken the lead on it. 2 weeks ago, Representative Benninghoff and I met with members of the House Republican appropriations staff. They're very supportive of it. And just to bring everybody up to date, during the 22-23 fiscal year, about $10.1 million was put into the fund from the closure of one state center and a change in the appropriation from one year to the next. In this year's proposed budget, $5.5 million is also proposed due to a decrease in the appropriation from last year to this year. So that would then bring us up to almost $14-15 million in the fund. This fund is currently being used by the Office of Developmental Programs for the housing pilot initiative.
Thanks, Nancy. So let's kind of go back on both of those bills. Thank you, first of all, for being the liaison, the lead, really on both of these. And as you've noted, we're trying to get bills that are bipartisan in both the House and the Senate. And I want to remind everybody, we'll go kind of the augmentation fund first, Nancy. The I think there's right now about $108 million state funds proposed for state center operations in the operating budget. Again, I call this out a lot. I want to remind everybody, this is not an overnight, we're going to get this money into community IDA. However, I also want to remind everyone and myself, you might think that money would automatically stay in IDA. But the way government works, if there's no state centers and they don't need that $108 million, just like we heard Nello talk about, that does not automatically default into our services. There is a budgetary legislative process. The budget office will look at that. That just looks like $108 million that isn't needed someday. And this augmentation account is really important because it preserves those dollars as they're reduced from the state center operating budget. Those do come directly to IDA. You can see it when we've shown you the budget. You can see money in, money out. So ultimately, that's a lot of money that the state's been appropriating. We have always talked about, we want to see that go into rates. Obviously, ODP has initiatives, and $5 or $10 million into rates isn't really going to move the dial that much, if at all, to increase rates. But we do want to remain aware and continue to communicate the issue that someday that's potentially $250 million of state and federal dollars together that can help support services. That is an impact. Most of our recent rate increases have been kind of around in that range. So that's something that we want to remain very vigilant about, very active on promoting and educating. And to circle back then to market index legislation, again, I feel very good about the fact we're having an open conversation with the other associations. This is another element of let's keep the money in the budget, as I spoke of earlier with Nello, and let's start this legislative process, which is not directly advocating for money in the budget, but the department has made very supportive comments, remarks about the need to get away from an every 3-year rate review cycle, which, as most of you know, doesn't guarantee that we get anything at that point anyway. So to base rate increases on published data, inflation was 2.9% last year. That's essentially what we would be asking for in the bills. What was inflation through December 31? Look at that number, get a commensurate percentage increase in the rates for the following year as part of the budget proposal, or however the bill would ultimately be enacted. But there is more momentum building around that, and we're actually having conversations. So Nancy, thanks again on that front. I'll give you the last word on all of this, or anything more that you wanted to add before we move on.
Yeah, Patrick, the only other thing I wanted to mention is that the other associations and TPA are also beginning to develop some language that we'll be sharing with ODP when it comes to efficiencies to decrease administrative burdens, if you will, but also potentially to redirect some funding away from processes that are overbearing, and the funding may be redirected elsewhere.
Thanks for calling that out, Nancy. Thank you, Nello, for joining us today. So we want to move into some technology talk. So as we move on here, I want to welcome in Kaylee Day from Pennsylvania Tech Accelerator. Kaylee, thanks for being back. I know we got to see each other a lot this past month. So I want to give you the chance to kind of give us the rundown and your perspective on the recent events in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And since I know Lauren's here, Lauren was at both of those events, and Lauren, please feel free as well to join in and give us your feedback. And let's talk a little bit about tech and what we all think was accomplished. And before I let you talk, I do want to acknowledge our members who were very active attending, exhibiting, being on panels, and just being really active in this. And it really showed me we have been making a lot of progress. When you think back, Tech Summit of years ago, where we were, it's very gratifying to see how much progress that we've made, because when you look at it month to month, it doesn't seem like much, but when you reflect on it over a period of time, I think it's very substantial. So Kaylee, again, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. Thank you again, Patrick. I'm Kaylee Day, the grant project coordinator for the PA Tech Accelerator. Like Patrick said, it was so great to see so many familiar names and faces at those summits, folks who have participated in our provider focus groups, who are doing some of this really innovative tech work in Pennsylvania so far. It was just really wonderful to see the turnout and that momentum and capacity that Pennsylvania has really been building for years. And I feel like we're really reaching a point where things are starting to come together and really take the state forward. So yeah, recapping those Philadelphia and Pittsburgh Tech Summits, the PA Tech Accelerator led 3 sessions throughout those summits, kind of focused on the activities that my team out of the KU Center on Disability, the State of the States Project, are leading in partnership with ODP, OLTL, and Temple University. So we started the days in both cities hearing from our panel of technology solution specialists. These are 8 folks with lived experience. We had 4 of them in Philadelphia and 4 in Pittsburgh. We've got some East Side, West Side representation for sure. And really just hearing from them on how technology supports their everyday lives and what they really imagine and envision for the future of technology and for themselves as leaders in this space. I really love that we have such a unique and diverse range of perspectives from these specialists. We have folks that are pursuing higher education, folks that are using tech in employment, emphasis that using technology as play and a way to socialize, transportation, using it for therapeutic methods, using binaural beats and things like that. We have an AAC user. We just had such a diverse range of perspectives that I think was really powerful. And these folks, they are completing some training with us right now around technology and leadership. And our hope is that by the end of this program, these are the folks that you guys will come to for as speakers, as consultants, as the experts with lived experience around using tech to support their lives. And we really hope that it encourages a trend among providers, both in Pennsylvania and beyond, of hiring folks with lived experience to be those technology experts in your agencies. We also held a session talking about technology first policy. Representative Joseph Hohenstein was able to join us in Philadelphia and gave some really rousing, encouraging comments around his intention to be a champion of technology first policy that we hope to introduce later this year. I think it was really encouraging to hear from him that he has a lot of hope around and optimism around this being a bipartisan supported effort from folks who've already, championed employment first in the state, folks that are really seeing the value of technology, not just for folks with disabilities, but for the entire community. And so it was really encouraging to hear that support and that champion, and we're looking forward to seeing that legislation move forward soon. And then, of course, we had our leveling up, talking about the PA Tech Accelerator and specifically how some of our activities are working with you all, are supporting providers, and some of the products that we hope to leave ODP and you all with when our time wraps up in this project to continue moving forward. Patrick, you and Dr. Shay Tanis, who isn't able to join me today, had a really great conversation around kind of what we're seeing. I know, of course, performance-based contracting is at the top of everyone's minds, and there was some good discussion around how that can support the tech and encouraging those technology initiatives under performance-based contracting. We talked about the ways in which tech can change what the DSP workforce may look like in the future, and that it's not a replacement of DSPs, but it can, take some of that grunt work, take some of those things that can be done by tech, and give those DSPs more time to do that human work, to do that emotional, human, relational, all those different skills that we know that AI and tech can't replace, that human connection that DSPs provide for clients. We talked about some of the innovative things going on around providers in the state, smart home models, looking at setting up in-house remote supports that allows, you know, these those DSPs that you want to keep, and allows them to support more folks and support those folks in a more independent, person-directed way using remote supports. It was a really great discussion, and Patrick, I want to give you a chance to share any takeaways you had from you and Shay's talk.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. Thanks for the great overview too. And I think some of the things you said, what I was thinking, I just want to highlight as well. So Rebecca, the keynote, I think the lived experience, you know, just so articulate and just put out the perspective of the person that is using technology, what they need, what the gaps are. She put that forward in such a meaningful way, such a relatable way. And I think what you just said about DSPs connecting with that in our environment too, but I think listening to folks, I think that was sort of a theme as I went into the discussions. And I know my colleague Craig is here, got a lot of information from him on the fact that a lot of things are going on in technology that individuals are just purchasing, staff are purchasing for individuals. So there's a very organic kind of thing that we would want and expect. And I think sometimes we're always trying to implement tech from a top-down approach, which I think you need to do. I made the comments, I know leadership does matter. I really want to elevate some of the efforts that our members are making. So, because I think that you've raised the point, like learning from the people from lived experiences, learning what other people are doing. And I think what we can do here for TPA members is a little bit of both. What tech are you using? You know, Craig could speak to some of the things that they're doing in terms of their version of smart home, you know, trying something out, staying overnight, borrowing tech. But I think that when we look at some of the common metrics that we're kind of always keyed in on staffing, how is some of this tech helping the people? How is the tech sort of helping maybe what you're doing? Because it's all about tech solutions and innovation, and how do we get creative around delivering, you know, better services through technology. So again, I think it was a really uplifting couple of days. I hope we're able to do more of that, and I would hope we could learn and take some of the advice and some, as you said, carry on some of this work through TPA by just showing what some of our members are doing and letting them talk with others. Because my sense on what we were doing at Tech Task Force was people were eager to learn and eager for information. And I don't want to eliminate that opportunity by thinking that we're at a certain point or that we shouldn't continue to collaborate and meet and again highlight and elevate some of the great work that agencies are doing, or the people they serve or the families, what they're experiencing. Because I think maybe the key theme was have to listen to people, know what the gaps are, know what they want and need. And that was Rebecca talking about new tech here. This is for you. This is going to be great. And hopefully, I don't know if these sessions are out there. I know they were being streamed, but she did that keynote in both Philly and Pittsburgh. And just some of the things that, again, we think we're coming up with great ideas sometimes, but we have to listen to the person, what they want and need, because they will tell us. So again, great. And Lauren, we're kind of almost edging into the performance-based contracting proper part of our time here, but I don't know if Jeremy's on yet, but did you want to contribute as well? I'd like to sort of transition because you guys have been so instrumental in pulling this together. And since the outset of Technology Task Force, I know you guys have both been there. I want to remind our members here today.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Absolutely. I mean, I think you and Kaylee really covered the highlights. I agree with sort of all of the takeaways from these two events. I think they were, they served a lot of purposes. One, I think they got real information, right, to providers, actionable, right, sort of steps that providers can take. We had some separate sessions in addition to sort of like the big day where we had keynote speakers. We also had some days with county administrative entities. In some of those sessions, we encouraged also like behavioral health MCOs to join those sessions as well. And so the sort of notion of all of our system partners, right, having buy-in and having an opportunity to kind of see their role in how they can promote and ensure that folks have access to technology, whether it's through, lending libraries, those opportunities to, sort of share, borrow, just have those experiences with technology. but also just from a, sort of a perspective of one of the conversations in a session with the AEs that really resonated with me was, starting to ask questions, framing the question of why hasn't technology been considered instead of has technology been considered, where it's kind of a yes or no, right? It's binary, but to start to really think about like, well, what's driving that decision making, right? Is it because the person's not interested? Is it because we don't have the infrastructure to do that? Is it because, as an agency, we just haven't, sort of adopted and started moving in this direction? So I think there were really, really important takeaways for folks who participated, regardless of what your role is. And on top of it all, they were a lot of fun, right? It's always great when we have an opportunity to be together, and certainly our the way that both of these sort of larger, more conference, right, sort of style days ended was with a panel of self advocates, and nobody better to kind of tell their story. And just be real about the ways in which they are using technology, dependent on technology, the ways in which technology makes things not just convenient for them, but just possible, right?
Yeah. Hey, Kaylee, if I can circle back to you just briefly, one of the things you said, Lauren, about the approach of how we looked at technology, however you worded it exactly here, but it made me kind of reflect on what you said, Kaylee, about is that the value of tech first, being implemented, Representative Hohenstein sort of taking a lead that it would be, before we do anything, have we looked at technology? We tried to introduce technology first, because I think sometimes we have a lot of employment first, technology first, various things we always want to do, but that really resonated with me. That's what we would be looking to do. Is that how you were envisioning it, Kaylee, as you move forward with Rep. Hohenstein? And
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it on the head on really the true meaning of tech first for us is not that tech is the only thing. It is not that tech is immediately applied to somebody, but that tech is the first option considered after you consider a person's goals. Consider those goals, consider where they want to end up, where they might need support, where there's that mismatch between a person and their environment, and then apply the tech that's going to support those goals. And that's really the focus, the mindset that we are moving towards with legislation, with these continued activities, is setting the state up to be in a place where that's the way the thinking flows, is how could tech support this person first.
okay, great, thank you. And Jeremy, thanks for being here. We'll let you weigh in too before we flip the slide.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Patrick. Good to see you, Kayla, Lauren, and Craig. So, yeah, echoing everything that has been said, one thing that was pretty stark for me was the professionalization of the work that needs to happen, not just through training, but through real professionalization, right? Like not only understanding all the gadgets and kind of what they do, but really understanding person-centered planning and then translating what technology can do for individuals. We, I think that ODP has been struggling with this, trying to find that balance, which really just doesn't exist in the field right now, of credentialing related to technology. Right, we know that Shift and the technology ATPs, assistive technology professionals, are written into the waiver. But I think we need to do more. And one of the other pieces that really teased out, I think, for our leadership team through these summits was, again, just that focus back on person-centered planning and really recognizing that we need to support our supports coordination organizations and our SCs to facilitate that. But
yeah,
good stuff.
Kaylee, I know you've got to run, so I want to make sure we give you a chance because I know you have the survey coming out soon. So
Yeah, Patrick, I just take one quick last minute here, talking about what's next for the PA Tech Accelerator project. Really, it's taking all of these things we learned at the summits that we've learned from providers, from our focus groups, from everybody who's participated so far. We've talked about all the great work that's been happening across the Commonwealth for years and how this project is trying to help to put those pieces together for some more momentum moving forward. And a big piece of that that we're doing next is our statewide provider survey. I know that you all are asked probably more than I care to know about how about doing surveys constantly. But if we could take 30 minutes to 1 hour of your time, we expect to deploy this survey early next week. I'm going to drop a link in the chat here for everybody where you can register to receive that survey when we release it. These are for any ODP or OLTL licensed providers across Pennsylvania. We would ask each agency to identify one person to complete the survey on your agency's behalf. When we send out that survey, we will provide a PDF copy of the questions so that if you need to consult with your staff and with your leadership on what some of those answers may be before you input them officially into the survey, you'll have that opportunity. But this is really a piece, this is mirrored on data that we have collected on a national level through Anchor and mirrors some of those technology questions we asked through that survey. We've not yet ever applied these questions to one state before, so we're really excited to gather this data for you all. And again, this is really data for you. This is going to show us kind of the current state of the state with technology use among providers, technology use to technology knowledge, so that we can really pull all that together and ensure our policy and our planning, our blueprint for the state going forward really addresses where you guys are at now. So please look out for that survey, sign up. As always, I am here for any questions at any time on any piece of the project. I will throw my email into the chat. And I really just want to thank you again, Patrick, Craig, all of the providers here, Jeremy and Lauren from ODP, for making space for us, for making space for technology, and for prioritizing it, especially in a world where it's very easy to let these things fall to the back burner. I think I learned that there's a lot of hope and motivation from everybody to continue this work towards being technology first, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you for being here today. Thanks to you and Shay. Please extend our regards to Shay as well. And thanks. I know we'll see each other soon. And last reminder on tech, I think we need champions at every level, and they're there. I mean, we have people that are already doing things, seeking them out, and letting them teach and us learn from them as well. So again, thanks very much, Kaylee. And we'll go into our performance-based contracting segment here and kind of wrap up with where we are, as things are very recently concluded in terms of provider submissions. So Jeremy and Lauren, welcome again. So we've teed up a few things here, and we know that the deadlines have just passed. So I'll turn it over to whoever of you would like to start, just to kind of give your top end takeaways, and then we have a few things here I know that we'll get into. But I want to give you guys the chance to sort of talk about ODP's reaction experiences to what just happened in terms of closing out the data submission for tier assignments and pay for performance.
So I think we can give you kind of our reactions. We really haven't had time to really sit down together and kind of look at what are some of those patterns, trends, things that we can identify early, right, from the latest round of submissions. I will start with, though, I will just say, right, the kudos go to the residential providers, honestly. There has been almost an immediate improvement in a couple of performance areas, and performance areas that are directly related to the health and safety of people that you're supporting. And so that's, even prior to the sort of latest round of submissions and that sort of thing, we could start to see improvement in incident reporting fidelity. So those unreported incidents that are getting identified through a claims matching system that ODP has, and also incident finalization timeliness. And so just want to start with the recognition that you all sort of saw this has been put out there. You've adopted changes to improve performance in these two areas. And that's entirely, work that you committed to doing and have been, significantly improving over the last, 18 months, 2 years at this point. So really excited to share that with you all. In terms
Anecdotally, I think,
yeah,
Lauren, we would also just comment on referrals.
yep.
I know that referrals have been streamlined, and I think that our regional offices and our administrative entities are expressing, again, anecdotally, that the engagement with providers is robust and really looking to fill vacancies in a timely way.
Yeah,
One
definitely.
thing I want to call out, it's on the slide. So we were all aware of this. So the providers who did submit in the earlier round last year have the option to resubmit if they wanted to. I understand that several did do that. But for the providers for whom you just reran the data with the appropriate updates that you had access to, of the 21 who applied for an upper tier of either clinically enhanced or select in residential, 5 of those were approved, correct? And I know we can't, that's not public, but those providers who were approved, my understanding is, have been notified that they were approved. So I think that is some encouraging news that we already have some people assigned, technically from this submission, because the data was rerun, ODP changed some of the reporting standards and requirements. So where these providers did not qualify a few months ago, they've now been qualified. Is that correct?
For either select or clinically enhanced. Yeah. Yeah, those providers have, like you said, been notified. And we will share that information once all of the tier determinations are made. That will all be made available. But yeah, I mean, I think the point that you're making, Patrick, is an important one that I think with those adjustments and with using providers 2024 data, because they had, more time, right, more notice to sort of get some of those processes in place, or stand them up, right, in a little bit of a different way within their organizations. That yes, they have been able to achieve either select or clinically enhanced here.
Yeah, really, really good news. So
Yep.
too early, I'm sure, to give us much more than you already have. But another point that I wanted to ask about and call out, because from our discussions recently, my understanding is that you guys feel you're in pretty good shape in terms of grading these out and sticking to the timeline so that these decisions would be made prior to July 1, when people then could hopefully be billing at the approved tier level. So is that accurate as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really pleased with the scoring team's progress. We have a lot of ODP staff dedicated to scoring at this point. But just to give folks kind of a general idea, we're about halfway done with the scoring of the provider submissions that have come in so far. And in terms of pay for performance, we have 232 residential providers who have submitted for pay for performance. And so, we'll be working through those submissions as well. So we are definitely on target for hopefully like a mid-May notification period for residential providers, and definitely on target for July 1 when it comes to, sort of those rate differentials and that sort of thing.
Great. And I actually would have put up the timeline from performance-based contracting, but when I looked at the timeline, I didn't see any real discrete activities around, getting to. So I thought, well, that doesn't really tell us anything. So is there any sort of discrete dates that are in mind for you, or essentially as long as we get there prior to the implementation date is, I think, the next thing that's really on the timeline. But again, you're confident that everybody's going to get there. So I mean, maybe a little
Patrick,
bit of yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. On some level, ODP feels the pressure to get this information back to providers because we know that budgets will be built around that, right? providers are really relying on that information to do some future planning.
Yeah.
The same thing is true for the pay for performance timeline. We're really hoping to have those in a position where we can begin making those milestone 1 payments somewhere in May of 25. Again, that was really Deputy Secretary Aaron's commitment to, supporting providers to build the capacity to get the system where it needs to be with the various metrics.
Yeah, great point, Jeremy. Thank you for calling that out. Very true, people. And I know anytime there's any initiative or gross adjustment or rate increase or anything's up in the air, it does make it difficult for organizations to really do the proper amount of planning. So yeah, that's appreciated. And I think even to our budget discussion, earlier more broadly, getting funds encumbered, getting this money out to providers so people can benefit from it for planning, and just as importantly, just getting the money out to be used appropriately. So before we completely leave the performance-based data submission, so not 100%, I understand, but a very good turnout. So did you want to comment on, for people who have not, anything that you would like to call out and remind people?
We definitely did, Patrick. We certainly saw, the last minute push, which is, I think not uncommon in terms of, what we see with QA and I self-assessments and that sort of thing on the annual basis, pretty much aligned perfectly, with what our experience has been. And so saw a pretty heavy push there Friday and Saturday. And so really not a ton of providers who should have submitted but didn't. Those providers, however, will be notified that they did not submit and that they should have. We'll basically handle this through our customary kind of enforcement process and let those providers know what they have to do in order to come into compliance with submitting and sort of the fallout for not submitting at this point. Looking at those providers not being eligible for pay for performance. So if we had a provider submit for pay for performance, but they didn't submit their PBC submission, we would not be approving a pay for performance, for example. But very, very few providers falling into that bucket, thankfully.
Okay, that's good. I understand it's in the 90s, 90% plus
Yeah,
that have
definitely.
applied.
Yep.
So yeah, and again, great work, everyone, getting everything in timely. Thank you for all of you who did submit for pay for performance. So maybe we'll go there next. And I think we've kind of already covered most of the slide, except a few things on pay for performance. And then one other issue I want to explore as well before we wrap up. But Jeremy, maybe we'll kind of talk about the one issue around NADSP. And I know you and I spoke about this directly as recently as Carlow College Tech. I think that was on the 13th. I had really, as I shared with you, I had not really heard much about the issue. Communications were going directly to listserv residential providers on NADSP requirement or ODP's requirement that NADSP portal data would be shared. Understand that. I want to say right up front, I would not have and did not discourage anybody on that basis. I understand the need to have the data sharing and the validation, but I think just the atmospherics of how it came out originally, my understanding was NADSP made a contact. Not everybody sort of deemed that credible. And by the time you and I spoke, Jeremy, like I had said to you, we're really not calling this out. I don't even see it in the portal. And then it was in the portal, and I didn't know that. So I'm just going to start there. I understand you did do communications. I spoke with Kristen a little bit about this yesterday, but I just want to give you the chance to say, policy and how it unfolded. So originally it was not in there. Is that a correct starting point? And then I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so some of this, Patrick, is discovery with NADSP in their data platform and how readily available data is, how it can be organized and aggregated. But just on the logistics. So we initially had a statement that allowed ODP access, right? Like it was an attestation that was in the original when the pay for performance survey launched on the 15th. So Deputy Secretary Ahrens had some additional conversations with providers. I think more broadly, ODP was hearing feedback from providers. So we added an additional clause that, because I think it was, to narrow the clause was really narrow what ODP's scope and purpose was, right? Like to try to alleviate any concern that ODP would be looking at information other than just trying to confirm where folks were related to performance-based contracting. I think it probably had an opposite effect, to your point, Patrick. But when you're working on the fly with this under time, we make some good decisions, and we make some
Well, Jeremy,
some
I want
other
to pause
decisions.
there because I did have to laugh because just what you said. So what you're saying is you have this broad statement that was concerning, and when you narrowed it, that I'll say from my perspective, that's what created the issue. So now I know because some people shared with me then, very close to the deadline, honestly. Well, here was the correspondence that kind of kicked it off, and at least from some people's perspective. So when you're changing on the fly over like a compressed period that's open. But yeah, I just want to give you a chance to speak to it. But sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I agree.
So on the face of it, right, like the Office of Developmental Programs needs access to this information. As we have discovered this through NADSP, and maybe some of your members have discovered this as well, the portal, the individual portals are really set up and designed for each individual provider. So when we try to scale up and look at statewide data, we're fairly limited by NADSP's platform that they're currently using. I certainly am not saying anything discouraging about NADSP, but for our needs, it's lacking. It's lacking in the type of aggregated data that we're interested in related to performance-based contracting. So I mean that's on the face of it. The other thought around, because this is somewhat of a workaround to get access to this information, we have been working with somebody on our staff, Shauna Blee, who is in our training and communications division. She's been hosting like learning collaboratives with providers. Those based on feedback, are going well. Providers are learning from each other, kind of learning the do's and don'ts, and so from that process, if a provider needs some technical assistance, they can kind of raise their hand. Sean is acclimated and can support that provider, absolutely on a driven by the provider and not necessarily by ODP.
Well, Jeremy, I want to go
Sure.
into another matter with while we have a few minutes left, but I'll say that maybe what I can do is ask for your help there with NADSP, since de facto ODP is endorsing NADSP for credentialing, and at the end of the day, this is your money that's helping to do this. So to the extent it can be made more efficient with your relationship, and we appreciate the resource, and if that can be shared with members, we'll certainly pass that along and disseminate it. But we would certainly like the efficiency to be there so that all these recent workarounds aren't necessary, and it's easier for you and our members and everybody else to get the data that everyone needs.
Exactly. Yeah, we know that we have some limitations right now in the data as it is, regardless of who has access to it. We know that if providers are multi-state and have credentialed staff in other states, they're going to show up in their aggregate data, right? Like so we have some of these challenges of like staff that are rolling over and may no longer be with an agency, staff that are working for multiple agencies and are credentialed, right? Like so there's all of these kind of data, but at the end of the day, ODP is going to work with each individual provider to really get to the source of truth around what the numbers look like.
Okay.
And then just lastly, we hope to really leverage this knowledge to leverage maybe some different outcomes with NADSP. There are other states that are in a similar boat as ODP, as Pennsylvania. So we hope that we can maybe make some positive changes over time.
Yeah, we're a little short on time, so if
Sure.
anybody can sort of put questions in the chat or Q&A, we'll try to get to those. I do want to bring up one final issue about waiting list statistics. So to the extent that, I think this is something that we would all benefit from some clarity on. And my understanding is ODP is going to issue quarterly waiting list data, because as we're trying to sort of correlate the reduction in the waiting list, the multi-year growth strategy, the issuance of waivers, I'll just say it feels like the waiting list data has been a little bit all over the map. And I think that kind of undermines the effort if we don't have good, consistent data on what we're tracking. So the last thing I'll say before letting you comment or respond or react is I think what we would want to see would be adult emergency waiting list, which has been targeted by the governor's initiative, and then still see top line total waiting list. And I've been seeing all kind of different numbers. And I want to raise that because I think it makes it difficult for us to sort of rally around the initiative, show progress. And I think we all just want to see eliminating any questions that creating any kind of confusion about progress being made. And I don't dispute progress is being made, but when we don't have that clarity, it just becomes more difficult for all of us to sort of message and work together. So could you kind of comment on where the status of the data and the release of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly appreciate the comment, Patrick, and know that as we have been, sort of actively rolling out multi-year program growth strategy, we have also then been working on several different sort of projects related to PUNs, related to, how counties are going to go about implementing multi-year program growth strategy. So I know that there's been kind of a deviation from the way that waiting list or PUNs data has been shared lately. And so some of the things that we're trying to do with that PUNs data is trying to get to what you're talking about, like how do we measure, right, the success of multi-year program growth strategy, and how do we know that folks that are getting enrolled in waivers specifically that have been made available due to, right, the sort of updated way that counties are managing that waiver capacity. That's what we've been trying to really hone in on. And agree that, sort of at a high level, there is utility in sort of seeing the number of people who are like coming in new for intake, and people versus people who are, maybe have been sitting on the waiting list for a period of time. And that's really what we're trying to dig into and be able to better reflect, so that folks can see if they're would be months where sort of overall there are numbers of the waiting list number would increase, but that you can see that it's because we had an increase in number of people actually coming in new, like getting registered for services, and then trying to identify how quickly AEs are able to then address the needs of people who have come into services, right? Think in addition to, sort of measuring the success of program growth is not only, how many new waivers have been made available, how many more people have been able to be served, but also, as we drive down the overall wait time for folks, that's an important and really critical way that we measure this as well. If we can continue as we have over the last several years, to get people off that waiting list, sooner. Our ultimate goal, right, is that people can get connected to services within, 30 days of registration. If we can start to, chip away, right, move that target from, somewhere around the two-ish year mark to, a year, 90 days. We're going to measure that as success and progress as well. And so at this point, we are trying to retool the puns data, trying to give folks just kind of a more clarity around what all of this means, because I think that the way that we were previously providing PUNS data was oftentimes misinterpreted, right? I think depending on how familiar, folks were with, what we're looking at and sort of what we're looking at in terms of adults on emergency waiting lists versus children on emergency waiting lists, that sort of thing. So we are committed to getting those data out there on a quarterly basis with some of those what we would call like key performance indicators related
That's
to
great.
those objectives.
Yeah, we look forward to that, Lauren. Thanks for the explanation and the comments. So I want to thank you for being here today. Jeremy, I see you put Shauna's information in the chat. We had a question about one-on-one. I understand another question I've seen about different services that maybe don't relate to PBC as far as data on the platform, things to be resolved. But I want to thank you both for being here today. Thanks for making the extra time. Craig, next slide, please. And I want to thank everyone for being here. So have a great rest of your day and weekend, everyone. See everybody next time. Bye.
Thanks, Patrick.